Hey survivors, it's Angie, and today at queenbeing.com, I'm going to do exactly what I promised you I would do yesterday. And that is, I'm going to talk about the difference between how narcissists are addicted to us and how we are addicted to them on a physiological level. All right, so let's get started. So, yesterday we talked about how narcissists use their addiction to dopamine without even knowing it, and they have an addiction to dopamine and they can't produce it properly because of some childhood injury they have. And so that brings you back around to how you become used for the narcissistic supply and why they become so addicted to you as the supply. All right, so now we're going to talk about how it is that we as empaths, as survivors, are addicted to our narcissists. Okay, so let's do this. First of all, how many of us are shocked when we realize exactly how addicted we are to someone who feels like someone that we just wish they'd fall off the planet, right? We're shocked. And even after the relationship is over in some cases, and it's taken tolls on us, a physical, a mental, emotional tolls, psychological issues, etc. You know, what it comes down to is that recovery from an abusive relationship can be very similar to withdrawal, from a drug. Like, say, if you were addicted to some drug like crack or heroin, you know, um, if you don't have it, apparently you will have real serious, like painful withdrawal symptoms. Well, a narcissist kind of gets into you the same way that a drug like that does, and quite literally the same way. Okay, look, it's it's due to the chemical bonds, the biochemical bonds that we have developed with them as toxic partners. Okay, so if we can understand exactly why we are involved with them, why we find ourselves there, and exactly what it is that is happening as far as are we addicted to them, or what what are the it's we have to understand that it's not the narcissist that we are addicted to. It's not because they're amazing. It's not because of anything like that. It's actually due to the trauma that we've experienced, because if, when you go through that, you learn quickly or not. You learn eventually to detach and to move forward knowing that you can make it. But if you can use your experience to help drive you toward more positive, healthy relationships, well, then you're golden. Okay. So, in addition, um, you know, one of the things that happens when you're dealing with this is, you know, as a survivor, society blames us. They blame the victim sometimes. And, patriarchal society especially will blame us if we're female. But in any case, um, understanding our reasons, understanding why we are addicted to them, helps us to take a step forward, to say it's okay for me to seek support for this issue. It's okay for me to say what happened to me, and I can be validated in that. Um, we're taught by our parents and by society to keep our mouths shut, to say nothing, to just go through it and get through it and make it our fault instead of theirs, the parents or the narcissist or whoever. Validation would actually, of course, help you if you're going through this. The traumas that we've experienced are part of what has bonded us to the narcissist in the first place. Okay, so a lot of people, when they go no contact, they really, really struggle with that whole concept because it sort of leads to the potential for relapse, right? It's almost like going cold turkey with the drug. Um, but if you go no contact and you don't work toward recovering from the psychological trauma, the physical trauma, the mental trauma, all of these things that you were subjected to in this toxic relationship, you know, um, you can end up suffering for the rest of your life. All right. So, like I said, we're going to go through a few different chemicals that our body produces, and we're going to talk about how our own brain chemistry sort of locks us into the narcissist, sort of makes us attached to them and feel like we need them. which is exactly, of course, what they want us to feel, you understand. But yeah, so this is why we get addicted to the narcissist on a biochemical level, okay? A biological level. You know, some of the bonds that we experience even make it harder for us to detach from them, all right? So we're going to talk about that right now. Let's do it. So let's start with number one, oxytocin, all right? Look, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but oxytocin is often called, the snuggle hormone, the love hormone, the warm and fuzzy hormone. It's what happens when you touch someone you love. It's what happens when you have an orgasm. It's what happens during really good sex. It is what it is that causes us to become attached to other human beings. It's what happens when you breastfeed your baby. Your body releases oxytocin. That's why you get tired and relaxed and everything. It is part of what lets the breast milk even come down to the baby. It's really a feeling of love. They call it the love hormone, right? So what it comes down to is that when you're going through the love bombing phase with the narcissist, they go through that idealization stuff. They pretend they're just like you, they're your soulmate, etc. It's truly that the reason we become so bonded to them during that phase is the oxytocin. You feel me? So, intermittent reinforcement of this behavior, the positive behavior, comes throughout the cycle. So, for example, your partner who becomes abusive later may start the relationship with being super nice, bringing, love bombing, bringing you flowers, gifts, cards, taking you on amazing weekends, etc., etc. Now, what it comes down to then is that by getting these little rewards throughout the love bombing phase, we are bonding further to them because we feel the oxytocin releasing inside of ourselves makes us feel like we're in love with that person. You understand? So love is about love on a physical level, bonding with another person on a physical level. It's all about that hormone being released. That hormone makes our bodies and our minds feel loving. Okay, so a lot of survivors will tell you, oh my God, we had the best sex. Oh my God, it was amazing. I've never felt anything like that. And they can't ever get to that point with future partners, so they feel like they let one get away when it's the narcissist. Now, that's not always the case, but it happens. So, why do we feel this kind of chemistry? Because of oxytocin, right? Well, it's because when you're dealing with someone who's a narcissist, they're so good at mirroring you. Do you understand what I mean? They're so good at, they can reach right inside your head and find out what it is that turns you on, basically. They can reach right inside your head and feel, whatever makes you happy, they know how to do that. They watch you. They behave in ways that they think you want them to behave, and a lot of times they're spot on with it. Okay, so what this does is it leads to a very strong sexual bond, or or another kind of intimate bond. It releases oxytocin, which of course makes you want them and trust them more, right? And then the narcissist, who of course is in general not an empathic person or empathetic person, absolutely doesn't form those same attachments, but they're able to fake it really well, right? But this is exactly what leads them to be able to walk away and go on to the next target, or to cheat on you or do anything else that they do that hurts you, because they really don't have the ability to feel the empathy. They only pretend. You feel me? That's, they mirror, as opposed to being empathetic and actually making an effort to feel you. They see you and they hear you, but they don't feel you. Does that make sense? Anyway, so of course, what it comes down to is that oxytocin, the feeling of love, the feeling of relaxation and ecstasy and trust and bonding, it's addictive, you guys. Of course it is. It feels amazing. And so, here's another interesting thing. Ladies, I'm sorry to tell you this. I'm with you on this, obviously, but those of us who are female, we have a little bit of a different situation going here, because the fact that we have estrogen flowing through us in en masse. I don't even know. Uh, Sorry. The estrogen actually causes us to feel more strongly toward our partners than testosterone. Testosterone does the opposite. Okay, so that's why I think in some cases a lot more men are players than women, because women are naturally going to be bonded to people who, who they've had sex with, basically. Whereas men are, their biology actually discourages that on certain levels. So anyway, let's move on. Dopamine. Okay, we talked about this yesterday with narcissists. Okay, we talked about what a neurotransmitter is. We talked about all this stuff yesterday. So I'm going to link to that video so I don't need to go into all that again today. But what it all comes down to is that dopamine is actually, the same, like I said, the same neurological transmitter that helps us be addicted to drugs like cocaine. It's the same one that makes us addicted to our narcissists. Same thing. And, both drugs and intensely pleasurable memories can trigger dopamine, which, of course, makes us feel like we're doing something right. It tells our brain, hey, that felt good, let's do it again, right? So, if you think about your recovery as you're going through this, and you think about the fact that uh, your narcissist in the beginning was so into you and you were so into him or her, and you think about the fact that, on all the the sweetnesses, the fact that y'all went and did all these special things together, the compliments, the praise, and the incredible sex, uh, you know, did you think about it even after you split up, or are you thinking about it even though it's been over for years or whatever? Well, of course you are, because again, that releases the dopamine in your brain, and that tells you, hey, that was fun, let's do that again. Feel me? Even though logically you know that was some bullshit and it wasn't fun and it was stupid, and sure, you had fun for a minute, but then all the rest of it sucked, and so logically you know better, but you're like, well, I must be in love with this person because I can't stop thinking about him. I can't get him out of my head. Nobody else compares. Nobody else matches up. Here's why. It's that. Okay. So, yeah. So here's another fact. There is a theory that suggests that we as humans produce, release, whatever, dopamine, um, not only for the good stuff, but also for things that we feel like we need to survive. Okay. So it doesn't just say to us, hey, this feels good. It also tells us what matters, what's important, and what we need in order to survive. Of course, the more exciting and amazing and the more significant the experience feels to us, the more significantly the body releases this hormone, and the stronger it becomes, the stronger of an urge it becomes to you, because your brain keeps hearing, hey, this makes you survive, this makes you survive, right? So here's where it gets very interesting. As people who have been abused by toxic narcissists, right, our own dopamine system is effed up, right? Because what happens is, because we go through, like I said before, the intermittent reinforcement stuff, right, where they give us little rewards throughout the abuse. They keep us coming back for more. We take scraps. We accept that. But that works really great with our system. It works really great with the dopamine system, because studies tell me that, hey, dopamine flows more readily when the rewards come out. And as we all know by all the lab rat studies we've watched and heard about, if we're nerds like me, um, you know, when rewards come out on an unpredictable schedule, that definitely changes. It not only increases the ability to that process ability to change who you are, but as an abuse tactic, it also, our dopamine flows more readily when those rewards come out unpredictably. Like if we don't know they're going to come out at 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 7 o'clock, but they might pop out, anytime throughout the day. Studies will tell you, the scientists have, the work has been done, my friend. It works better when you don't do it on a schedule. Isn't that interesting? I think so. So, you know, after you've been, gone through a big old gaslighting episode and you're just empty and dead and drained and you just want to run away or hide or sleep or whatever, you know, that's when the narcissist comes back and, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Oh, I'm such a bad person. Don't feel, I ruined such a wonderful. Blah, 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 blah. They go through and they end up making you feel guilty that they abused you, and you end up sometimes either apologizing to them or actually excusing their behavior and pretending that it's okay with you. It's not okay. But anyway, the point is that when this goes on, like say you're going through the devaluation, right? Like say that you have been on, bad terms with your narcissist for 2 weeks. You don't even know what you did wrong this time. You've just been in trouble. Everything's terrible, right? And then let's say that the narcissist comes to you and gives you a hug and says, I love you. I'm so sorry I've been acting like an asshole. Please forgive me. Let's move forward. Da, 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 da. Within minutes, that narcissist can often have you backpedaling and can often have you thinking, oh my God, everything's going to be okay. Why was I so worried? He's always okay. Well, it's not always okay, but that's what you think in that moment, right? And here's the thing, your body is betraying you, my friend, because your body is what lets out that oxytocin, or I mean the dopamine in that situation, and makes you think everything's okay and you start to relax and feel like everything's going to be okay. So if you combine this with what you're dealing with in the abuse, that makes your brain go, pay attention, something's wrong, right? Dopamine comes out again. And then when you add in the pleasurable memories and the positive thoughts and the good parts that you keep remembering over and over that keep you attached in the first place, oh my God. It's so bad, especially for females, but even for men in this case, because literally it's like you're doomed. It's like your body and your chemistry are betraying you as a human. Your logic doesn't match up with your emotion. And of course that's also grounds for, narcissistic distortion or cognitive distortion, not distortion, dissonance, cognitive dissonance, right? Okay, let's talk about cortisol. Okay, let's talk about, while we're at it, adrenaline and norepinephrine. Norepinephrine, that other one, all right? Let's so cortisol is a stress hormone, and we all know that. That's the one you've seen in the TV commercials where they're like, oh, cortisol causes fat belly, right? And it does. It does because what happens is when you're stressed out, when the relationship goes high, it goes low, when you feel devastated, when you feel excited, all these things happen. Uh, you know, your adrenal glands go into overdrive. We've talked about that before with adrenal fatigue, right? Um, but that puts you in the position of being like in fight or flight mode all the time. That's what happens with a narcissist and the abuse. And so since we obviously don't always have a way to release this stress and tension in our lives, um, that's when, cortisol comes along and traps the stress in our bodies, and then it starts to hang all over us like fat, right? I mean, not like fat, as fat. And that sounds really simple, but literally that's how we can end up gaining weight when we don't otherwise have a good reason for it. So, as the abuse plays over and over again in our heads, our cortisol levels go straight up. And as that happens, um, you know, we become overweight, we become tired, lethargic, depressed, etc., etc. You get the adrenaline going and the norepinephrine. Did I say that right? Norepinephrine. Um, anyway, also it makes our bodies ready. Okay, like I said, we have to constantly be in fight or flight mode when we're dealing with that abuse, and so again, that's also why we are addicted to the abusers, because adrenaline has an antidepressant effect on our bodies, on our minds. Okay, so because what happens is that when we're scared, when we're anxious, when in fear, anxiety, well, then we'll release dopamine because it helps us to feel less stressed out, and this obviously can cause us to become adrenaline junkies, as though we are on, sort of like hormonal steroids, right, or chemical steroids, I don't know, and the adrenaline then is constantly causing us to feel a rush. And that causes us, you know, because we are constantly in a cycle of bonding and betrayal with this person. So, if you're going through the no contact thing, and you're dealing with the withdrawal from that incredible rush, just like you would with cocaine or crack or whatever other drugs that have that situation, heroin, whatever, you know, it's pretty fucking painful. Excuse my language. So I think I think what it all comes down to is that we have to be aware of the pain that we can cause ourselves and other people in this situation. Okay. So anyway, number 4, trauma. All right. Trauma causes us to bond to the narcissist. You all have heard of Stockholm syndrome. It's basically that deal. The narcissist is our abuser, is our person who puts us in the cage, so to speak. And even though we don't enjoy the abuse during the abuse, the fact that we become afraid and anxious as this happens leads us to, trauma bonding because our bodies, again, react in the fight or flight mode. So what happens is that as empaths, as victims, as survivors, we experience trauma bonding with our narcissist because of those gaslighting incidents, because of the intenseness, the intensity, that's not a word, intensity of it all, right? So what happens is that those intense traumas, those abusive situations have caused us to subconsciously attach to the narcissist also, in addition to the oxytocin and the adrenaline and all the other, the dopamine, all of these things, the trauma bonding itself. So, subconsciously, we develop patterns that cause us to attach to them so strongly that it makes it really hard to detach at all. And like I said, it's Stockholm syndrome where the victim of the captor becomes attached and even defends them in some cases, right? It's weird. So obviously, when you've gone through narcissistic abuse, there's no single individual type of person that goes through it. I've talked about this before. It literally can be any race, religion, culture, sex. It doesn't matter. Anybody can go through this. It goes across financial, grid lines or whatever. It goes across, where you are in society. It's not a particular culture. I literally have clients in every English speaking country and in a couple that speak Spanish, but speak English well enough to talk to me anyway. So what it comes down to is that trauma bonding will be more significant for people who have grown up in either violent homes or emotionally abusive homes, or who have, had a narcissistic parent and maybe didn't even know that they were abused because they were spoiled in some ways, like materially, but they were emotionally neglected. You feel me? Where do you hear this from? Right. So anyway, what it comes down to is that when people have gone through abuse once, they often go through it more than once, and y'all know what I'm talking about. If you had a narcissistic parent, you're more likely to have a narcissistic partner or coworker or friend in the future, or all three. So, this causes you as a survivor to further reinforce those bonds, to further allow yourself to be victimized because it feels normal and natural to you. You get me? So, if there was a situation where you were victimized in the past, like going through an abusive parent, going through an abusive marriage, whatever, and you keep doing it, this obviously leads to a certain type of lifelong attachment. Because of the repeated incidents of abuse and varying people in your life, the experience of having to survive all of this, it causes you to, sort of reenact it over and over again. I've talked about this many times with clients where, well, why is it that, my parents were narcissists and now my spouse is a narcissist? Why am I doing this to myself? Why do I keep attracting this? Well, if you don't take the time to understand, you'll never know and you'll keep doing it. But that's why I created that duo method, discover the problem, understand the problem, overcome the problem. It's very simple. It's not very simple, but at least that part of it's simple, right? So, yeah. So I think, the other thing that we have to focus on is that when we're dealing with the unresolved trauma, when we're dealing with unresolved connections to narcissists, it feels a lot like someone died if they've left us. It feels a lot like we're recovering from a serious drug when they left us. But we are unconsciously, the reason I think we keep getting involved in narcissists at all, when we haven't educated ourselves on this process and made the conscious choice to change our ways, is simply this: we are recreating the original experience again and again. We are, if we had a bad relationship with our parents, we are looking for someone who represents our parents and who helps us to, sort of in our current state, stop the problem. Sort of, it helps us to sort of, we continue to recreate it until we fix it in our lifetime. And if we don't, God knows what happens next, because I'm not sure about all of that. But anyway, I think what it all comes down to is that, you've got to understand that there are various types of bonds that you develop with a narcissist that make you feel addicted. Those are, physiological, psychological, you know, the connections in your brain. It's all of this stuff. And what we have to know is that, you know, understanding what we're dealing with will help us to overcome those things. We have to stop accepting the blame as victims and become survivors and thrivers. You feel me? We have to have compassion for other people who are in our situation, and we have to, help where we can. I personally, that's why I do what I do. I want to continue to pay forward any help that was given to me during the time that I was recovering from this. And I guess we're always in recovery. I still have triggers today, but now I'm educated enough to understand what I'm dealing with, and I can process all that stuff a little better than I used to. Feel me? So stop judging yourself, my friend. Let's empower you. Let's take back your power. Take this knowledge, put it in your little pot, and cook it up and turn it into what works for you. Become the best possible version of yourself. Don't allow a narcissist to try to run your life anymore. Don't allow yourself to be controlled by a narcissist, and don't allow a narcissist to shake you, not one bit. Okay? You get to decide how you feel. Everybody tells me, well, not everybody, some people won't believe me when I tell them that, but that's because they haven't actually tried it. Try it. Decide how you feel today. Okay? Understand what you're dealing with chemically. Use logic, and talk yourself down when you feel those addictive feelings coming up for the narcissist. All right? This is why we're addicted. Now, do you have other questions, comments, concerns, things you want to talk about? Leave them in the comments below. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. And if you're looking for more information about narcissism, narcissistic abuse recovery, and the related topics, check out queenbeing.com. Oh, if you haven't already joined SPAN, which is my free and confidential online support group, you can do that at queenbeing.com/SPAN. All of these links are going to be in the description below for you. Or you can check out my books at booksangiewrote.com. Or if you'd like to join my new free soul staycation, you can do that at soulstaycation.com. And if you'd like to speak with me personally about your issue with your narcissist, or about starting your own business in order to get away from your narcissist, I do both of those things, you can go to narcissisticabuserecovery.online. All right? Thank you for being here today. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being a part of my life. And as always, thanks for letting me be a part of yours. I really appreciate you. Have a great day. Thanks so much.